They told me I was too emotional. They told me to be quiet. And one evening, in a restaurant I helped my daughter choose, she leaned across the table, smiled politely, and said, "Please do not say too much tonight, Mother. Just let us handle the conversation." My throat tightened. I looked around the room I had visited so many times. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the warm lights. None of it could hide the chill in my chest. That night, I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I simply looked at the walls, the ceiling, the quiet corners, and I made a decision. If they wanted silence from me, then I would let my actions speak. This is not just a story about a dinner. It is a story about discovering your worth when the world tries to make you small. Before we jump back in, tell me, where are you tuning in from? And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe, because tomorrow I have saved something truly special just for you. My name is Margaret. I am 58 years old. I live alone in a small, quiet house in the suburbs. It is a 2-bedroom place, painted cream and blue. There is a garden in the back, full of lavender, thyme, and roses. Every morning, I open the kitchen window and breathe in the scent of the flowers. It calms me. It reminds me that life still has sweetness. My days are simple. I wake up early, just before the sun rises. I boil water for tea and sit by the window as the light comes through the curtains. I read the newspaper slowly. I listen to the birds. Some days, I hum to myself without even knowing I am doing it. Once, my life was busy, loud, full of movement. I used to work in real estate. I managed buildings. I met with clients. I signed papers and talked about prices. I wore suits, carried a leather bag, and took phone calls at dinner. But now, I am retired. People say I should rest. So I do. Sometimes I take long walks. Sometimes I knit small scarves and give them to the church. Sometimes I look at the photos on my walls. There is one photo I always stop to look at. It is of my daughter, Eliza, when she was 10. She is wearing a red dress and standing under a cherry blossom tree. Her smile is wide. Her hair is in 2 little braids. I remember that day. We had gone to the park with a picnic. She spilled juice on her shoes and laughed. I laughed too. I thought back then that we would always be close. Now she is 33. She works in finance. She lives in the city, in a tall apartment building with big windows and small furniture. Everything in her home is white, silver, or glass. When I visit, I try to sit carefully so I do not touch anything. We used to talk every day. Now, it is once a week, sometimes less. I tell myself it is normal. Children grow up. They get busy. They change. Still, sometimes, when the phone does not ring for days, I feel something inside me shrink. I also have a son. His name is Paul. He is kind, quiet, and always says thank you. He has a wife named Jenna, and they live 2 hours away with their 3 children. They visit every few months. The children run through the garden and play with the wind chimes. I bake cookies, and we sit on the porch with lemonade. It feels warm, real, and good. But with Eliza, things feel different. She is sharp, strong. I raised her to be brave. I never wanted her to be soft in a world that would try to push her down. Maybe I gave her too much steel. Maybe I did not teach her enough softness. Still, I love her. I love her more than words can say. Last week, she called and said, "Mother, I want to invite you to dinner. It will be formal, a client event. I want you to look elegant." I laughed and said, "I will try not to wear my gardening boots." She did not laugh. That night, I went through my closet. I picked out a dark blue dress I had worn to a wedding 2 years ago. I ironed it, polished my shoes, and looked in the mirror for a long time. I touched the lines on my face, the gray in my hair. I told myself, "You are still someone." The next day I took the train into the city. The restaurant was high-end, the kind with soft music and glass walls. I stood outside for a moment before walking in. I did not know then. That one sentence would change everything, but something inside me already felt it. My normal life was about to become something else. The restaurant was beautiful. Tall windows reached from the floor to the ceiling. The chairs were soft and deep. The napkins were folded like little birds. A waiter in a white shirt walked me to the table. I saw Eliza before she saw me. She was sitting straight, with her chin high. Her black dress was simple, but expensive. Next to her was a man in a dark gray suit. He had silver hair and a wide smile. They were speaking quietly. I felt a small sting in my chest. It was the way she laughed. With him. Light. Easy. When she saw me, she stood up and gave me a quick hug. It was not warm. It was polite. "Mother," she said, "you look fine." I smiled. "Thank you, dear. This place is very nice." She introduced the man. "Mother, this is Mr. Grayson. He is one of our top clients." He shook my hand. His fingers were cold. We sat down. The menus were thick with golden writing. I pretended to read it, but the words blurred together. Eliza spoke with Mr. Grayson about stocks, markets, and things I did not fully understand. I listened, smiling when it seemed right, nodding now and then. But something felt off. I have been a mother for over 30 years. I know my daughter's voice. I know when she is nervous. I know when she is pretending. And tonight, she was pretending. She used words that were not hers. She laughed too hard at small jokes. She sat very still, as if trying not to move too much. And then, she looked at me. Her eyes were sharp, but her voice was smooth. "Mother," she said, "please, do not talk too much tonight. Just enjoy the meal and let me lead the conversation." My stomach dropped. I nodded. I smiled. But inside, something broke. She did not say it unkindly. She said it like a manager giving instructions. I looked around the restaurant. Soft music played above us. People laughed. Glasses clinked. Waiters moved like dancers between tables. I sat, in silence. My hands rested on my lap. My mouth stayed closed. I felt like I was disappearing. Mr. Grayson spoke about the future of business. Eliza agreed with him, praised him, asked questions. They talked as if I was not there, as if I was a painting on the wall. At one point, I dropped my fork. It hit the floor with a small clang. Eliza flinched. She looked at me with quick eyes. Then she smiled at Mr. Grayson again. "Sorry, my mother is a bit clumsy sometimes." She laughed. He laughed, I did not. I picked up my fork slowly. I wiped it with my napkin. And I looked at her. Not with anger, not with sadness, with something else. Something calm, something old. That was when I noticed the wall behind her. It was brick, red, real, and strong. The kind of brick used in buildings from the 1920s. I knew that kind of wall. I had worked with buildings like this long ago. I had walked into restaurants like this one. But not to eat, to check contracts, to speak with owners, to make decisions. I used to be someone. I still was. I just forgot. Or maybe I let others forget. But sitting there, in my quiet dress, at that quiet table, I remembered. I looked up at the lighting. Clean, warm chandeliers. I looked at the windows. Triple glass. Soundproof. Custom made. I looked at the floor. Tiles. Hand-finished. High-end. And I knew something that Eliza and Mr. Grayson did not. I knew this building. I knew who had developed it. I knew who had bought and sold the land. And most of all, I knew it was still under private ownership. Not corporate, not a chain. One owner. One building. A small smile formed in my heart, though it did not reach my lips. Eliza kept talking. Mr. Grayson kept smiling, and I sat there, quiet, exactly as she asked me to. But I could feel something changing. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table holding a warm cup of tea. The sky outside was pale and gray. A light breeze came through the half-open window, but it did not bring peace. The air felt heavy, like something was sitting on my chest. I kept hearing her voice, again and again. Please do not talk too much tonight. Just enjoy the meal and let me lead the conversation. The words were soft, but they hit hard. I looked down at my tea. The steam curled upward, vanishing into the air. Just like my confidence. Was I being too sensitive? Was it really that bad? Had she meant it kindly? My thoughts circled like birds with no place to land. I stood up and walked to the sink. I washed the cup, even though it was already clean. I wiped the counter, straightened a dish towel. All small things. Things to keep my hands busy. But nothing could quiet the noise in my mind. Why did she invite me to that dinner if she did not? Want me to speak? Was I just there to fill a chair? To look polite and quiet beside her? I thought back to when she was little. Eliza used to ask me so many questions. She would run into the kitchen with her school bag bouncing and shout, "Mom, guess what I learned today?" And I would stop what I was doing. Every single time. Because her voice mattered to me. Now she was grown, polished, sharp, professional. She walked in heels and spoke in numbers and names. And when she looked at me across the table last night, I felt like a stranger, or worse, an embarrassment. The thought stung. It stayed with me as I walked into the living room. I sat on the couch and looked at the photo shelf. Eliza's childhood. Pictures filled the space. Her first steps, school plays, graduation. There were no photos of me in the recent years. Just her new life, her clean modern world. Was there no space for me in it anymore? A strange feeling sat in my stomach. Not sadness exactly, not anger, just confusion. Where did I go wrong? Did I say too much or too little? Did I hold on too tightly or let go too soon? The questions came like waves. I could not stop them. I pulled the blanket from the side of the couch and wrapped it around myself. I leaned my head back and stared at the ceiling. The silence in the house was deep, almost too deep. It made me feel small, and yet, in that quiet, something unexpected stirred. Not a memory, not a thought, a feeling. A small flicker, like the tiniest flame. Barely there, but real. I got up slowly and walked to the hallway closet. I reached for a box on the top shelf. It was covered in dust. I carried it back to the coffee table and opened it gently. Inside were folders, papers, photos, business cards, old pieces of me. There was a photo of me standing in front of a newly opened restaurant, shaking hands with the owner. A letter of thanks from a property manager. Blueprints with my notes in the margins. I had forgotten these things, or maybe I had packed them away on purpose. Because I thought my time was over. Because I thought no one cared anymore. But holding those papers, in my hands now, I remembered. I was not always just mom. I had been a businesswoman, a consultant, a builder. I had walked into empty spaces and helped turn them into places people loved. I had made decisions, signed contracts, led meetings. I had mattered. And maybe I still did. Maybe Eliza did not see. Maybe she had forgotten. But I had not. Not anymore. That quiet dinner, it did not just silence my voice. It woke something up. I looked out the window. The clouds had shifted. Light was peeking through. I stood there for a long time, holding one of the old papers. And I whispered to myself, I remember who I am. Even if she had forgotten, I had not. And that changed everything. The next few days moved slowly. I kept myself busy, cleaning, cooking, walking around the block. But nothing could quiet my thoughts for long. I kept replaying the dinner over and over in my head. The way Eliza smiled at her client. The way she looked past me, not at me. The way she asked me to stay quiet. I wanted to believe it was just a misunderstanding. That she had a reason. That maybe she was nervous. I wanted to trust her. After all, she was my daughter. And I knew her heart. Or at least, I used to. On Friday afternoon, I got a call from her. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice light. "Do you want to meet for coffee tomorrow morning?" My first instinct was to say no, but I paused. Maybe this was her way of reaching out. Maybe she wanted to explain. So I said yes. We met at a small cafe downtown. It was quiet, with soft music and the smell of cinnamon in the air. I arrived early and chose a table by the window. The sun warmed my face as I waited. When she walked in, I stood up and smiled. She looked beautiful, as always, neat, confident, well-dressed. She gave me a quick hug and sat down across from me. We ordered tea. She talked about work. She talked about her week. She asked about the garden. But not once did she mention the dinner. Not once did she say, "I am sorry." Not once did she ask how I felt. I listened carefully, searching for signs. A tone in her voice. A flicker of regret. But there was nothing. Still, I told myself, maybe she just does not know how to say it. Maybe she is trying in her own way, because I wanted to believe the best in her, because I loved her. Because love, sometimes, means giving the benefit of the doubt. She was smiling. She was laughing at small jokes. She even held my hand for a moment when I told her I had not been sleeping well. And for that one small moment, I saw the little girl again. The one who used to fall asleep on my lap. The one who cried when I left for work. The one who used to write me birthday cards with, "I love you more than all the stars." That memory softened me, so I looked at her and said, "You know, I have been thinking a lot lately." She took a sip of tea and nodded. "Oh? About what?" I hesitated. Then I said, "About my life. About everything I used to do. The work I was part of. The places I helped build." She smiled politely. "That was a long time ago, Mom." I nodded slowly. "Yes, but it still matters." She tilted her head. "Of course it does. I just meant things are different now." Her words felt like a gentle dismissal, not unkind, but not deeply thoughtful either. Still, I smiled. I did not want to push. Not yet, because I still wanted to trust her. Because I still hoped she would see me again. Not just as her mother, but as a whole person. We finished our tea. She glanced at her watch. "I have a meeting soon," she said. "But I am glad we did this." I stood up and gave her a hug. "Me, too," I said softly. She kissed my cheek and walked out the door, heels clicking on the sidewalk. I sat back down, finished the last sip of tea, and whispered to myself, I want to trust her. But trust is not always simple. It is not just about love. It is about honesty, about being seen, about knowing your voice matters. I looked out the window at the street. People were walking, cars passing, life going on. And inside my heart, that small fire was still burning, because even though I wanted to trust her, part of me was still waiting for her to say the words I needed to hear, waiting to feel like I mattered again, waiting to be more than just silent. I stood up, wrapped my scarf around my shoulders, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, the sky was clear, and I told myself, no matter what happens, I will not stay invisible. The following week passed in quiet routines. I spent time in the garden, trimmed back some of the roses, and finally cleaned out the drawer full of old receipts in the kitchen. Still, my mind stayed unsettled. It was like walking through a familiar house where every light had been turned off. I knew the shape of everything, but it all felt distant. One afternoon, while watering the front lawn, my neighbor Cynthia waved at me from across the fence. She was in her late 50s, always cheerful, and never shy about sharing her thoughts. I liked her honesty. She leaned over the fence and smiled. "You have not been around much lately. Everything all right?" I hesitated. Then I nodded. "Just keeping to myself, I suppose." She gave me a look, the kind that says, "I am not buying that." "Is it Eliza again?" she asked gently. I blinked. "What do you mean?" She lowered her voice. "I saw you two at that cafe last weekend. I was sitting by the door. You looked like you were trying really hard. She looked like she was somewhere else." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Cynthia continued, "I do not mean to be nosy. I just worry sometimes. You give so much to that girl, and she gives so little back." I looked down at my hands, still wet from the hose. "She is busy," I said. "Work, meetings, stress. I understand." Cynthia's voice softened. "Maybe. But understanding is not the same as being appreciated. Just be careful, Margaret. Do not lose yourself trying to keep someone else comfortable." I stood there, frozen. Her words were kind, but they felt like a warning, a truth I had not been ready to say out loud. She smiled, gave my arm a pat, and turned to go. As she walked away, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not sadness, but recognition. Had I been making excuses for Eliza? Had I been explaining away things I should have questioned more closely? I thought back to the dinner, to the way she avoided my eyes when I spoke, to how she cut me off mid-sentence when I told that simple story about the bakery, to how she called, me just visiting. Then I thought about the cafe, the polite conversation, the distant smile, the way she checked her phone when she thought I was not looking. And now Cynthia had seen it too. That night, I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, staring at a small crack in the living room wall. It had always been there, not big enough to fix, but just enough to notice. It reminded me of how I was feeling, fine on the surface. But something was starting to break underneath. I picked up my phone and opened my messages. Eliza had sent me a photo earlier that day. It was of her office, a new painting on the wall. She had written, "What do you think?" I looked at it, then typed, "It looks lovely. Do you have time to come by this weekend?" She read it almost right away. I saw the little dots appear as she typed, then stop, then appear again, then stop. A few minutes later, she replied, "Not sure. Maybe Sunday. But it depends. I will let you know." I stared at the screen. Depends. It always depended. I set the phone down and closed my eyes. Cynthia's voice echoed again in my mind. "Just be careful, Margaret. Do not lose yourself. That night, I could not sleep. I lay awake listening to the soft tick of the hallway clock and the occasional rustle of tree branches outside. I thought about who I used to be, and I asked myself a question I had not asked in years. If she were not my daughter, would I allow anyone else to treat me like this? The answer came swiftly. No. I turned over and pulled the blanket up to my chin. Something inside me was waking up. Not fury, not revenge, something older, something stronger, something I had buried beneath years of being quiet, patient, and kind. The warning I had heard that day was not just Cynthia's voice, it was mine too, and I was finally ready to listen. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. My hands brushed through my hair, slower than usual. My eyes looked tired, but not from lack of sleep. It was something deeper. A quiet weariness. I reminded myself that Cynthia meant well. She was only trying to protect me. Maybe she was even right. But I also reminded myself that Eliza was my daughter, my only daughter. And I could not believe that she would hurt me on purpose. As I brushed my hair, I spoke aloud to the empty room. She is just overwhelmed. She will come around. She always does. But my voice sounded uncertain. Still, I made myself smile. I pushed down the ache in my chest and went on with my day. That was what I had always done. Keep moving. Keep smiling. That afternoon I baked a lemon loaf. The scent filled the kitchen with something warm and familiar. I wrapped half of it and placed it in a tin with a little yellow ribbon. When I drove over to Eliza's office building, I felt strangely nervous. I told myself not to. It was just a kind gesture, a little treat for her and her team. But when I stepped into the building and asked the receptionist if Eliza was available, the woman gave me a polite smile and said, "She is in a meeting. Would you like to leave that with me?" I nodded, trying to hide the disappointment. As I handed over the tin, I said, "Please tell her it is from her mother." The receptionist smiled again and said, "Of course." I stood there for a moment, waiting, hoping. But no message came. No one came out. So I turned and walked back to my car. I sat there for a few minutes with the engine off. The world moved outside the windows, but I felt completely still. Why had I come here? Why did I keep trying? I remembered how Eliza used to run into my arms after school, how she used to leave little notes on my nightstand. "You are the best mom. Thank you for the snacks. I love you." Where had that child gone? But then I shook my head and forced a laugh. "She is still that girl," I whispered. "Just busy, just tired, just distracted." I turned the key and drove home, trying to push the sadness down like a beach ball underwater. The next few days were quiet. Eliza did not call. She did not come by. I told myself not to mind. I cleaned the windows. I rearranged the pantry. I even tried to start an old jigsaw puzzle I had not touched in years. But I kept hearing Cynthia's voice in my head, and I kept remembering the way Eliza's eyes slid past mine at dinner, the way she had not laughed at any of my stories, the way she had looked annoyed. Still, I told myself again and again, she does not mean it. She is just stressed. By the end of the week, I was tired of my own thoughts. I decided to distract myself with a little shopping trip to the antique store on Main Street. Walking through those aisles, touching the old furniture and dusty books, brought back memories of quieter times. I used to take Eliza there when she was young. She loved the smell of old paper and wood. She used to ask me to tell her stories about each object we saw. I smiled at the memory. Then I saw something on a shelf. A small porcelain cat, white with blue painted flowers. I had one just like it when I was a girl. I reached for it, turning it gently in my hands. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me. "Margaret?" I turned. It was Linda, an old friend I had not seen in years. She looked surprised and happy. After a warm hug, we stood talking for a while. She asked about Eliza, and I gave a careful answer. Then she asked how I was doing. This time I hesitated. "I'm all right," I said. "Just trying to stay busy." She looked at me kindly. "You always were the strong one, but even strong people need to be cared for." Those words stayed with me as I walked back to the car. I clutched the porcelain cat to my chest. Another gentle reminder, another quiet warning. Still, I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself I was fine. But something in me knew I was not. It was a Sunday morning when I noticed it again. Eliza had invited me to brunch at her apartment. I took it as a good sign, a step toward mending whatever had been off between us. I arrived with fresh flowers, lilies, her favorite, and a jar of homemade strawberry jam. I wore my light blue cardigan, the one she always said made me look warm and gentle. Her apartment was clean, modern, filled with sunlight and glass. Everything was in its place. It looked like a magazine, not a home. Eliza gave me a quick hug at the door, but it felt hollow. Her arms barely wrapped around me. Her cheek touched mine like it had somewhere else to be. She turned and walked ahead without saying anything about the flowers or the jam. I followed her into the kitchen, telling myself, it is just how grown children behave. It is normal. She is just busy. She poured coffee into 2 mugs. No cream, no sugar, even though she knew I liked both. I added a spoonful of sugar from the dish on the counter. The sound of the spoon against the ceramic felt loud in the silence. I sat down, trying to smile, and said gently, "These chairs are lovely, very elegant." She nodded, but did not look at me. As we ate, I watched her carefully. The way she moved, the way her fingers tapped against the side of her glass, the way her eyes flicked toward me and away again, like I was something to manage, not someone to love. She chewed quietly. I spoke softly. "I used to make that same salad when you were little. Remember how you always picked out the olives?" I chuckled. Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. She glanced at me. "I do not remember that." Something inside me folded. I nodded. "That is all right." Later, as she walked me to the door, I handed her the jar of jam. "It is from the same berries I planted when you were in middle school. The bushes still grow strong." She took it with one hand. "Thank you." I waited for her to say something more. She did not. I turned and stepped into the hallway. Before, the door closed behind me. I looked back. She was already walking away. That was the moment I could no longer lie to myself. Something had changed in her. Or perhaps something had always been there, and I had never seen it. There was no warmth in her eyes, no softness in her voice, no sense of closeness. The way she looked at me, it was distant, cold, like I was a duty she had to fulfill, like I was a guest she did not really want in her home. As I walked to the elevator, my chest felt tight. I tried to tell myself again, she is just tired. Maybe something happened at work. Maybe she is going through something and cannot talk about it yet. But the truth was rising like a tide inside me. It was in her silence, in her sighs, in her glances. She was not just distracted. She was unhappy that I was there. I remembered how she had asked me to stay quiet at dinner, the way she had not introduced me to her guests, the way she had barely looked at me that entire evening. And now, this brunch, this cold, polite hour. I pressed the elevator button, breathing slowly. When I reached the lobby, I walked outside into the soft breeze. The city was alive, cars rushing past, people walking, voices blending into one another. But I felt like I was moving through glass. I clutched my purse and looked up at the building. So beautiful on the outside, so polished, but inside there was no warmth, just like Eliza. I began to wonder, had I done something wrong? Had I said something that turned her heart away from me? Or had she always seen me this way? Old-fashioned, unnecessary, a shadow in her bright new life. I walked slowly back to my car. I did not cry. Not yet. But the tears pressed against the backs of my eyes like waves behind a dam. As I sat behind the wheel, I whispered aloud, "She used to look at me with love. Now she looks through me." And for the first time, I did not tell myself it was nothing. For the first time, I allowed the truth to sit beside me in silence. The days after brunch passed in a fog. I could not stop thinking about the way Eliza looked at me. It was not the way a daughter should look at her mother. There was a coldness, a distance that made my heart ache. I knew I had to speak to her. I needed answers. Not because I wanted to argue or blame, but because I needed to understand. One evening, I called her. My voice was calm, but steady. "Eliza, can we talk?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "Okay, Mom, come over." When I arrived at her apartment, she opened the door without a smile. The warmth was gone. We sat across from each other in her living room. The silence stretched between us like a thick fog. I took a deep breath. "Eliza, I feel like something is wrong. You have been distant lately. At dinner, at brunch. You asked me to stay quiet. I do not understand why. I want to know what is going on." She looked down at her hands. Her fingers twisted the edge of her sleeve. "I do not want to hurt you," she said softly. I reached out and took her hand. "You cannot hurt me by telling me the truth. Please." She looked up, eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and guilt. "It is not easy for me to say this," she began, "but I have been feeling overwhelmed. Everything is changing so fast. Work, life, even us." Her voice cracked, and I waited patiently. "I did ask you to stay quiet at dinner," she admitted, "because I was embarrassed. Not by you, but by the situation." "Embarrassed?" I asked, confusion rising. She nodded. "I have been under a lot of pressure. I am trying to manage everything on my own. Sometimes I feel like I am failing. When you came to dinner, I did not know how to explain things. I did not want my friends to see the cracks." I squeezed her hand gently. "Eliza, you do not have to hide from me. I am here to support you, always." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I know. But it is hard for me to admit when things are not perfect. I thought if I kept quiet, it would all get better." I nodded, understanding more than she knew. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "I want us to be honest with each other. No, more hiding." She looked at me, a flicker of relief in her eyes. "I want that too," she whispered. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. But even as we talked, I could see the weight she carried, the worries that kept her awake at night, the fears she did not share. That night, I went home with a heavy heart, but also a quiet determination. I would be there for Eliza, not just as her mother, but as her friend, and I would find a way to help her carry those burdens. Because sometimes love means standing quietly by someone's side, even when the truth is hard to hear. And sometimes it means speaking up, even when it feels scary. That evening marked a new beginning for both of us. But little did I know the real challenges were still ahead. After that conversation with Eliza, my mind would not rest. It was as if a small storm had settled inside me, swirling and moving without pause. Even though she had shared a part of her feelings, I could not stop thinking about what she had left unsaid. Night after night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, but inside my head, the noise was loud. I thought about every moment with Eliza, the way she had asked me to stay quiet at dinner, the way she had avoided my eyes, the tension between us that I could no longer ignore. I asked myself questions I did not have answers for. Was I too old-fashioned? Had I done something wrong? Did she blame me for her struggles? I felt a tight knot of worry in my chest. I worried that I was losing my daughter, that she was slipping away into a world where I did not belong. The next day, I went about my routine, but my heart was heavy. When I made coffee, my hands trembled slightly. At work, my mind drifted to Eliza instead of the tasks at hand. I tried to distract myself with small things, reading the newspaper, watering my plants, listening to music, but nothing helped. My thoughts always returned to her. I remembered the first time I held her in my arms. How tiny and perfect she was. How her laughter filled the room. How she used to run to me after school, full of stories and hugs. Those memories made the present feel even more painful. At night, I would replay our conversations over and over, searching for clues or hidden meanings. Sometimes I found myself wishing I could turn back time, to fix things before they went wrong. I felt isolated, even when surrounded by family and friends. It was a quiet loneliness, the kind that makes your heart ache without tears. One evening, I sat by the window watching the rain fall softly on the streets. The droplets made little circles in the puddles. The world outside seemed peaceful and calm. Inside, I felt a quiet pain growing. I whispered to myself, I do not know how to fix this. I do not know how to reach her. I missed the warmth of our relationship, the easy conversations, the shared laughter. But most of all, I missed feeling close to her. I knew I had to find a way to be patient, to give her space while staying close, to wait without losing hope. But it was hard. Every moment without her felt like a small loss, and every silence between us was a reminder of what we were fighting to save. As the nights passed, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would not give up on Eliza, no matter how long it took, no matter how painful it became, because a mother's love does not fade with time or distance. It grows stronger in the waiting, and I was willing to wait forever. The nights grew longer, and with them came a quiet pain that settled deep inside me. It was not the kind of pain that screams or demands attention. No. This pain was soft, almost invisible, like a shadow resting gently on my heart. I sat alone in my living room one evening. The rain tapped softly against the window, its rhythm slow and steady. Outside, the world seemed calm, but inside, I felt anything but. I wrapped my hands around a warm cup of tea and stared at the dark sky. I thought about Eliza, the daughter who had once been my closest friend, the person I shared so many dreams with. Now, we were strangers wrapped in silence. The house felt empty without her laughter or footsteps. I could still remember the sound of her voice, how it filled the rooms with energy and life. But now, her voice was distant, like a song fading into the wind. Tears gathered in my eyes, but I did not cry. I did not want to break the fragile quiet I held inside. Sometimes pain is too heavy to carry out loud. So, it stays hidden, wrapped in stillness. I thought about all the moments I had missed. The dinners where I was asked to stay quiet. The times she avoided looking at me. The smiles that never quite reached her eyes. I remembered how I had tried to be patient. How I had reached out gently. But patience can feel lonely when it is met with coldness. I sighed deeply, feeling the weight of years and memories. The pain was not just about Eliza. It was about the loss of what we had shared. The trust, the closeness, the love that once felt unbreakable. It was about learning that sometimes people change, and you cannot hold on to them the way you used to. I wished I could tell her how much I loved her. How much I wanted to understand her struggles and help carry her burdens. But sometimes words are not enough. Sometimes love is shown in the quiet moments, the soft presence beside someone, the patience to wait, the courage to keep hoping. Closed my eyes and let the silence fill the room. In that quiet, I found a small strength growing inside me. A strength born from love and loss, from hope and pain. I knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be days when the silence between us felt unbearable, but I also knew I would never stop trying, because love does not give up, and a mother's heart holds a quiet power, one that can heal even the deepest wounds. That night, I whispered a prayer for Eliza and for myself, for healing, for patience, and for the courage to keep walking forward, even in the quiet pain. Days passed, but the weight of silence between Eliza and me grew heavier. The quiet moments we shared were filled with unspoken questions and hidden pain. My heart longed for clarity. I knew I had to find the courage to ask the questions that had been haunting me. One afternoon, I called Eliza again. Called Eliza. My voice was steady, but inside I felt nervous. Eliza, I need to see you. Please. She paused before replying. All right, Mom. Come over. When I arrived at her apartment, she greeted me with a quiet nod. The warmth I once knew was still missing. We sat down, and the silence pressed on us like a thick blanket. I looked into her eyes and spoke softly but firmly. Eliza, I cannot live in this silence anymore. I need an answer. Please tell me what is really going on. Why have you been so distant? What are you hiding? Her eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing at first. The room seemed to hold its breath. Finally, she spoke, her voice breaking. Mom, I have been struggling. I did not want to burden you, but things have been hard. At work, at home, I feel lost. I reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. You are not alone. You can tell me anything. I am here. She looked away, ashamed. I am sorry for pushing you away. I thought if I kept things to myself, it would be easier. I shook my head gently. Eliza, hiding pain only makes it grow. We must face it together. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I do not want to lose you, she whispered. You will never lose me, I promised. But you must trust me, please. She nodded slowly, hope flickering in her eyes. That conversation was not easy, but it was necessary. It opened a door between us that had been closed too long. I realized that sometimes we have to be brave enough to ask the hardest questions, because only then can we find the answers we need, and only then can healing begin. After our difficult conversation, I felt a small weight lift from my shoulders, but I knew that understanding Eliza's pain was just the beginning. The real challenge was to see everything clearly, even the parts I wished were different. Over the next few days, I watched Eliza closely. I noticed the way she looked tired, the subtle sadness in her smile, and the quiet moments when she seemed lost in thought. She carried a burden I had not fully seen before. One afternoon, she invited me to her apartment. As we sat down, she finally opened up about what had been hidden. "I have been trying to keep everything together," she said quietly. "But it is hard. My job is stressful, and I feel like I am failing. I do not want to disappoint you." Her words hit me deeply. I had not realized how much pressure she was under. "Eliza, you could never disappoint me," I said gently. "I am proud of you, no matter what." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I am scared," she admitted. "Scared of losing control. Scared of not being good enough." I reached out and held her hand. "Thank you for telling me," I said softly. "I want to help you. We can find a way through this. Together." She smiled faintly, a small light in the darkness. In that moment, I finally understood the depth of her struggle. It was not just about being distant or angry. It was about fear, doubt, and the heavy weight of expectations. I realized how much I had missed while caught in my own pain. This understanding did not erase the hurt, but it gave me a new strength. I knew I could no longer stay silent or wait. I had to be present, patient, and loving, even when it was hard. Because sometimes, understanding is the first step toward healing, and love is the light that guides us through the darkest times. Understanding Eliza's pain was a turning point for me. I felt closer to her than I had in months. Yet, even with that connection, I realized that I could not fix everything for her. Sometimes, love means knowing when to step back. After our heartfelt talks, the tension between us seemed to ease. But there was still a fragile distance I could not cross. Eliza needed space, and I needed to respect that. One afternoon, I made the difficult decision to walk away, not forever, but for a time. I told myself it was not giving up. It was giving both of us room to breathe and heal. I packed a small bag and left my home for a few days. I stayed with a close friend who listened without judgment and offered quiet comfort. Being away was painful. I missed Eliza's presence, her smile, the way her laughter used to fill the house. But the silence I carried inside felt even heavier. I thought about all the moments we had shared, the happy memories and the hard ones. I reminded myself that sometimes the hardest choices are also the most necessary. Walking away was not about abandoning my daughter. It was about finding strength to wait with hope, without losing myself in the process. During those days apart, I reflected on what I wanted for our future. I hoped for healing, for trust to grow again, and for love to guide us back to each other. It was a quiet pain to leave, but I knew it was part of our journey. Sometimes, stepping back allows space for change to happen, slowly, gently, and with grace. And I believed that, in time, Eliza and I would find our way back to one another. Until then, I would carry her in my heart and keep hope alive. Even after I walked away, the pain did not leave me. It stayed quietly, like a shadow that followed me everywhere I went. I thought that distance might make things easier, but it only made the hurt more clear. Every morning, I woke with a heavy feeling in my chest. The house felt emptier than before. I missed Eliza's presence more than I expected. The silence around me was loud, filled with memories and questions that had no answers yet. I found myself replaying our conversations over and over in my mind. What could I have said differently? Was there a moment I missed that might have changed everything? Sometimes tears came without warning. I cried in the shower, in the dark, or when no one was watching. But I also found myself holding back tears when I was around others, afraid they would see my weakness. The pain was deep, but it was also a sign of how much I loved Eliza. Love and pain are often connected in ways that are hard to understand. I tried to keep busy during the day. I cleaned the house, cooked meals, and took walks in the park. But no matter what I did, the emptiness remained. Friends asked how I was, and I smiled and said, "I am fine." But inside, I was not fine at all. The nights were the hardest, when the world was quiet. My thoughts grew louder. I missed the way things used to be. The laughter, the hugs, the feeling of being close. Yet even in this pain, I found small moments of strength. I learned to sit with my sadness without letting it consume me. I reminded myself that healing takes time. I told myself that pain was part of the process, not the end of the story. One rainy evening, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. The rain mirrored my tears, falling softly and steadily. I whispered, a prayer for peace, for myself and for Eliza. "I do not understand everything yet," I said quietly, "but I will keep hoping. I will keep loving, even from afar." And in that quiet moment, I realized that pain, though heavy, could also teach me patience and courage. The pain stayed, but so did I. I would carry this heartache with me, and one day, it would become part of the story of how I learned to be stronger, kinder, and more hopeful. There were moments, especially in the quiet hours of the night, when my mind drifted back to the past. I missed the way things used to be with Eliza. Those memories were bittersweet, filled with warmth, but also a sharp ache that reminded me of what was lost. I remembered when she was a little girl. Her laughter would fill the house, bright and pure. She had a way of lighting up a room with just a smile. I would watch her play in the garden, chasing butterflies or picking flowers. Those were simple times, but they were full of happiness. Recalled the evenings we spent together, cooking dinner side by side. She would sneak tastes of the sauce, or try to help with the chopping. Sometimes she would get frustrated, but we always ended up laughing. Those small moments built a bond that felt unbreakable. When she was a teenager, we had our challenges, like all families do. But even then, there was love beneath the frustration. We talked late into the night about her dreams, her fears, and the future she wanted. I believed we could get through anything together. Now, those memories were like photographs in an album I could only look at from a distance. They reminded me of a time before the silence grew between us. I missed the easy conversations, the hugs, the feeling that everything was going to be all right. Sometimes, I would catch myself reaching for the phone to call her, then stop. I was afraid of disturbing the fragile space we were in. I worried that if I pushed too hard, I might lose her completely. But the longing for the past was strong. I wanted to tell her how much I missed those days, how much I missed her. One afternoon, I sat by the window with a photo album in my lap. I traced the pictures with my finger, remembering birthdays, school plays, family holidays. Each photo was a story, a moment, frozen in time. Tears filled my eyes as I whispered, "I miss you, Eliza. I miss us." The past was not just a place of sadness. It was also a reminder of the love that still lived between us, even if it was hidden beneath pain. Remembering those times gave me hope. If we had shared so much joy once, maybe we could find our way back. But I also knew that we could not live in the past. We had to face the present, with all its difficulties, and find a new path forward. That balance was hard to hold, between holding on to memories and letting go enough to grow. I wished I could tell Eliza all of this. I wanted her to know that, no matter what happened, I would always carry our past in my heart, and I hoped she missed it too, because sometimes, missing the past is the first step to healing the future. The days passed slowly, and the weight of silence between Eliza and me felt heavier than ever. I knew I needed someone to talk to, a person who could listen without judgment, who could help me see my feelings clearly. One afternoon, I called my old friend, Claire. She had always been there for me, through good times and bad. Claire invited me over to her cozy home. As soon as I stepped inside, I felt a small sense of relief. The warm light, the familiar smell of fresh coffee, and Claire's kind smile made me feel safe. We sat down at the kitchen table, and I began to speak. At first, my voice was soft, hesitant. But as I talked, the words came more easily. I told her everything: the distance with Eliza, the pain I felt, the fear that our relationship might never be the same. Claire listened quietly, nodding with understanding. She did not interrupt or offer quick solutions. Instead, she gave me space to express my feelings. After I finished, Claire took my hands in hers and said, "I am so sorry you are going through this. It is hard when the people we love feel far away. But remember, you are not alone." Her words comforted me. Sometimes just knowing that someone cares makes a big difference. We talked for hours that afternoon. Claire shared her own stories of family struggles and how she found healing through patience and forgiveness. She reminded me that relationships take time to mend, and that love is a powerful force, even when it feels fragile. Try to be gentle with yourself, she advised, and with Eliza. Both of you are hurting. It is okay to take small steps. Her advice stayed with me. I realized I had been pushing myself too hard to fix things quickly. Healing is not a race. It is a journey. Before I left, Claire gave me a warm hug. "I am here for you," she said, "whenever you need to talk." That day, I felt a small spark of hope. Talking to Claire helped me see that I was not broken or alone. It reminded me that healing comes through connection, not isolation. After I returned home, I tried to reach out to Eliza again, but this time with a softer heart. I sent her a message, simple and honest. "I miss you. I am here when you are ready." I did not expect an immediate answer, but I felt peaceful knowing I had offered my love without pressure. In the days that followed, I kept talking to friends, writing in my journal, and taking care of myself in small ways. I cooked healthy meals, went for walks, and allowed myself moments of quiet reflection. I learned to listen to my feelings without fear. Sadness, anger, confusion, they all had a place inside me. But so did hope, courage, and love. Slowly, I felt trust beginning to return, not just in Eliza, but in myself. Because sometimes, healing begins when we open our hearts to others and allow ourselves to be vulnerable. That day with Claire was a turning point. It showed me that I did not have to carry my pain alone, and with that support, I found the strength to keep moving forward. Saying goodbye was the hardest thing I ever had to do. It was not a sudden decision or a harsh ending. It was quiet, slow, and full of mixed emotions. I knew that I needed to let go of something. Maybe a dream, maybe a hope, or maybe the version of my relationship with Eliza that I had been holding on to for so long. For weeks, I wrestled with the idea. Part of me wanted to fight harder, to reach out more, to fix the broken pieces. But another part of me understood that sometimes love means knowing when to step back. I remember the day clearly. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, and the house felt empty, yet full of memories. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, holding a letter I had written but not yet sent. The letter was my way of saying all the things I could not say in person. I poured my heart onto the page, my love, my pain, my hopes, and my fears. "I am saying goodbye," I wrote. "Not because I do not love you, but because I need to find peace for myself I folded the letter carefully and placed it in an envelope. I was not sure if I would send it right away. I needed to be certain that this goodbye was what I truly wanted. Later that day, I went for a long walk. The air was cool, and the world around me was quiet. I thought about Eliza, about all the times we had shared, the laughter and the tears. I reminded myself that saying goodbye did not mean forgetting. It did not mean giving up on love or hope. It meant accepting the reality of our situation and choosing to care for myself. When I returned home, I finally sent the letter. It was both terrifying and freeing. In the days that followed, I waited for a response, but none came. That silence was hard to bear, but I held on to the belief that healing takes time. Saying goodbye also meant saying goodbye to the pain I had been carrying. I allowed myself to feel the sadness fully, to cry without shame, and to grieve what might have been. Yet, amid the sadness, I felt a quiet strength growing inside me. I was learning to stand on my own, to find my own voice, and to believe in my own worth. I began to see that this goodbye was not an end, but a beginning. It was a step toward healing, toward self-love, and toward a future that I could create for myself. I knew the journey ahead would not be easy. There would be days of doubt and moments of loneliness, but I was ready to face them with courage, because sometimes the greatest act of love is to let go, and sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the chance to start again. Being alone was a new experience for me. It was not the kind of loneliness that comes from being physically isolated, but a deep, quiet space inside where I could finally hear myself. At first, the silence was overwhelming. The house, once filled with laughter and chatter, now felt too still. Each room held memories that echoed in my mind. I walked through the rooms slowly, touching the walls as if to remind myself that I was still here, still standing. There was a strange comfort in the emptiness. For the first time in a long time, I was not trying to fill the space with noise or distractions. I spent many evenings sitting by the window, watching the world outside. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the sky shifted colors as the sun set. I noticed things I had not seen before. The way the light danced on the leaves, the soft hum of distant traffic, the occasional call of a bird. In those quiet moments, I began to listen to my own thoughts. They were messy at first, tangled with sadness, regret, and uncertainty. But slowly, a new voice emerged, a voice of calm and clarity. I realized that being alone did not mean I was lonely. It meant I had space to breathe, to reflect, and to heal. I started to take care of myself in small ways. I cooked meals that I enjoyed, without worrying about anyone else's preferences. I went for long walks in the park, feeling the fresh air fill my lungs. I read books that inspired me and wrote in my journal every night. These acts were small, but they gave me a sense of control and peace. I also began to appreciate my own company. I found joy in simple things: a cup of tea, a warm blanket, a favorite song. Being alone gave me time to understand who I was outside of my relationships and roles. I thought about my dreams, my strengths, and the person I wanted to become. There was no rush, no pressure to fix everything all at once. Just a gentle unfolding of self-awareness and acceptance. Of course, there were difficult moments, too. Times when the silence felt too loud and tears came without warning. But I allowed myself to feel those emotions without judgment. I learned that healing is not a straight path. It moves in waves, sometimes forward, sometimes back. One evening, as I sat quietly with a cup of herbal tea, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the strength I had found within myself. Gratitude for the lessons learned through pain. Gratitude for the chance to start anew. I understood that being alone was not a punishment or failure. It was a necessary chapter in my journey, and in this solitude, I began to build a foundation of peace and resilience. I was alone, yes, but I was not broken. I was becoming whole again. The days of solitude slowly began to change me in ways I had not expected. I realized that I was not the same woman I had been before this painful chapter began. The experiences, the heartbreak, and the silence all shaped me. Not into someone, bitter or broken, but someone stronger and wiser. It was a quiet transformation, like a seed growing beneath the soil, unseen at first but gathering strength. I found myself reflecting more deeply on who I was and what I wanted from life. I saw how much I had given away pieces of myself in the past, trying to keep peace or meet others' expectations. Now, I was learning to hold my own space, to value my feelings and needs without guilt. Every morning I woke up with a sense of purpose, even if it was small at first. I did not rush or push myself too hard. I allowed myself to grow at my own pace. Sometimes I caught glimpses of this new self in the mirror. My eyes looked clearer, and my posture was more confident. I smiled more often, not because everything was perfect, but because I had chosen to embrace my journey with hope. I noticed that I was less afraid to be alone with my thoughts. Instead of running away from difficult feelings, I faced them gently and with compassion. I had learned to listen to my inner voice, the one that whispered truths I had ignored for too long. This voice told me I was worthy of love, respect, and happiness, no matter what had happened before. I also discovered a quiet courage inside me. The courage to say no when something did not feel right, to set boundaries, and to protect my peace. I no longer felt the need to explain or apologize for my feelings. I accepted that it was okay to be imperfect and to make mistakes. This new maturity brought me a deep sense of freedom. I was no longer defined by past hurts or other people's opinions. Instead, I was creating my own story, one filled with strength, kindness, and resilience. There were moments when old fears tried to creep back in, doubts about whether I could truly heal, worries about what the future held. But now, I met those fears with patience and understanding. I reminded myself that growth is not a straight path, and that healing takes time. I began to see my life through a different lens. What once felt like failures were now lessons. What once felt like endings were now new beginnings. I felt a deep gratitude for the journey, for the pain that taught me compassion, for the silence that taught me to listen, and for the solitude that taught me self-love. I realized that I was becoming a woman who could stand tall on her own, yet still open her heart to others. A woman who was not afraid to be vulnerable, because she knew that vulnerability was a sign of true strength. I found peace in knowing that I did not have to have all the answers right away. I was allowed to take one step at a time, trusting that each step would lead me closer to wholeness. Most importantly, I understood that I was worthy of happiness, not because of what I did or who I was with, but simply because I was me. This acceptance was the greatest gift of all. I was not the same woman who had begun this journey. I was better, stronger, wiser, and more alive, and I was ready for whatever came next. In the midst of the long nights filled with silence and reflection, something small but powerful began to shine inside me. A tiny light of hope. At first, it was barely noticeable, like a flicker deep within a dark room. But slowly, it grew, stronger, casting away some of the shadows that had held me captive for so long. This small light gave me a reason to keep moving forward. It was the whisper of possibility, the gentle reminder that even after great pain, healing was possible. I remember one particular morning when I woke up and felt this light more clearly than ever before. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky with soft pinks and oranges. I sat by the window, holding a warm cup of tea, and for the first time in months, I felt a calmness that was more than just temporary relief. It was a deep, steady peace that told me I was on the right path. That day, I took a slow walk in the nearby park. The world around me seemed fuller, richer. The birds sang a little louder, the flowers bloomed a little brighter, and the breeze carried the scent of fresh earth. It was as if nature itself was encouraging me to find joy in small moments. While I walked, I thought about how easy it had been to lose sight of the good things in life when caught up in pain. I had forgotten to look for the light when everything felt dark. Now, I understood that hope did not always come in grand gestures or sudden miracles. Sometimes, it came quietly, in the small details of everyday life. I began to notice these details more often. A kind smile from a stranger, the laughter of children playing, the comforting feel of a soft blanket. These simple things became like little sparks that added to the light growing inside me. That evening, I sat down with my journal and wrote about this small light. I described how it gave me strength when I felt weak and hope when I felt lost. Writing helped me see how far I had come, even if the journey was not yet over. I also realized that this light was not just for me. It was something I could share with others who were struggling, just as others had shared their light with me when I needed it most. The next day, I reached out to a friend I had not spoken to in a while. We talked for hours, sharing stories and listening with open hearts. That conversation reminded me that connection was another kind of light, one that could heal wounds and bring comfort. With this new hope, I began to take small steps toward rebuilding my life. I tried new hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and allowed myself to dream again. Each step was not always easy, but the small light inside me kept shining, guiding me forward. Sometimes the light dimmed when I faced setbacks or memories. That hurt. But I learned to be gentle with myself during those times, knowing that healing was a process with ups and downs. Most importantly, I started to believe in my own resilience. I saw that I had the power to keep moving, even when the path was uncertain. This belief became a foundation for my growing confidence. I knew the journey ahead would still have challenges. There would be moments when the past seemed too heavy to carry. But the small light within me was a promise that I could find peace and happiness again. This light was a gift I chose to nurture every day. I protected it by surrounding myself with positive people, by practicing self-care, and by reminding myself that I was worthy of love and kindness. Looking back now, I see that the small light was the beginning of a new chapter. It was the spark that ignited my courage to heal and to live fully once more. I want anyone listening who feels lost or broken to remember this. Even in the darkest times, there is a small light inside you waiting to shine. It might be quiet at first, but if you hold on to it, nurture it, and believe in it, it will grow and guide you toward a brighter tomorrow. This small light became my hope, my strength, and my reason to keep moving forward. And I know it can be yours too. Starting over was never easy. After everything I had been through, I felt like I was standing at the edge of a vast ocean, unsure of which direction to swim. The past had weighed me down, and the future seemed uncertain. But deep inside, I knew I had to begin again. It was not about forgetting what had happened. I could never erase the pain or the memories. Instead, it was about choosing to move forward, step by step, with hope and courage. The first thing I did was create new routines. My days no longer revolved around worry or sadness. I made a simple plan to care for myself, both physically and emotionally. Every morning, I started with a quiet moment, just me and my thoughts. Sometimes I would sit by the window with a cup of tea and watch the world wake up. Other times I would write in my journal, capturing my feelings and dreams. These small acts gave me a sense of control and calm. They reminded me that I mattered, that I deserved kindness and attention. I also began to take better care of my body. I went for slow walks in the park, feeling the fresh air on my face. Exercise was not about pushing myself hard, but about moving gently and listening to what my body needed. Eating well became a way to nurture myself. I cooked simple meals filled with colors and flavors that made me smile. Food became not just fuel, but a source of comfort and joy. As I built these new habits, I felt a shift inside me. I was learning to love myself again. Not perfectly, but honestly. At first, the days were still hard. Old doubts and fears crept in like unwelcome visitors. Sometimes, I wondered if I could really heal, or if I was meant to stay broken. But I refused to let those thoughts stop me. I reminded myself that healing was a journey, not a race. Each day was a chance to try again. I reached out to friends who supported me, people who listened without judgment and offered gentle encouragement. Their kindness was like a warm blanket on cold nights. Slowly, I opened my heart to new experiences. I took a painting class, something I had always wanted to try but never had the courage to do before. Holding the brush in my hand and seeing colors come alive on the canvas was a small victory. I also began to explore new friendships. Meeting people with different stories and perspectives helped me see the world with fresh eyes. These connections reminded me that I was not alone. One of the most important lessons I learned during this time was patience, with myself and with the process. There were days when progress felt invisible. I might wake up tired or overwhelmed. On those days, I allowed myself to rest without guilt. I learned that healing was not about constant action, but about balance, knowing when to push forward and when to pause. I also found strength in forgiveness. Not only forgiving others who had hurt me, but forgiving myself for past mistakes and for times when I had felt weak. This forgiveness was freeing. It lifted a heavy burden from my shoulders and opened space for hope and peace. As the weeks passed, I noticed something beautiful. I was becoming whole again, not in the way I was before, but in a new way. Stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. I was beginning again, yes, but this time with a deeper understanding of who I was and what I truly wanted from life. I felt more confident to set boundaries and to say no to things that did not serve my well-being. I was learning to listen to my heart and trust my instincts. Starting over was not just about change. It was about growth, about becoming the woman I was meant to be. This new beginning was a promise to myself, a promise to live fully, to embrace both the joys and the challenges with courage and grace. I knew the road ahead would still have bumps and detours, but I was ready to face them, knowing I had the strength and the small light inside me to guide the way. This was my fresh start, and it was beautiful. Life is full of unexpected moments, and just when I thought I was finding peace, the past came knocking again. It was a day like many others, quiet and calm. But everything changed the moment I saw his name on my phone screen. My heart skipped a beat. I was not sure if I was ready for this, but I knew I had to answer. He wanted to talk. His voice on the phone was softer than I remembered, filled with hesitation and something like regret. He said he wanted to explain, to make things right. But I was unsure. Could I trust him again? After all the pain and silence, was there really a chance for us to start over? These questions swirled in my mind as I listened, trying to stay calm and steady. He said he missed me, that he had made mistakes and realized how much I meant to him. He spoke about change and how he wanted to be better, not just for himself, but for us. Part of me wanted to believe him. I wanted to hope that the person I had loved so deeply was still there, somewhere beneath the hurt and mistakes. but another. Part of me was cautious, afraid of being hurt again. Our conversation was full of pauses and unspoken feelings. It was clear that he was struggling to find the right words. I could feel the tension between us, the weight of the past pressing down. After we hung up, I felt a mix of emotions, confusion, sadness, and a small spark of hope. It was hard to know what to think or feel. I spent that evening alone thinking deeply about what I wanted and needed. The next few days were difficult. He sent messages, asking how I was, hoping to reconnect. I read them carefully, wondering if I should respond. Part of me feared that opening the door even a little might lead to more pain. I talked with close friends and my journal, searching for clarity. I knew I had changed. I was not the same person who had been hurt before. I had grown stronger and more aware of my worth. This made me realize something important. I did not have to say yes just because he asked. I had the right to protect my heart and choose what was best for me. When I finally decided to reply, I was honest but kind. I told him I needed time and space. I said that healing was a process, and I could not rush it or pretend everything was okay. He understood, or at least he said he did. There was respect in his words, and that gave me a little peace. In the days that followed, I noticed something changing inside me. The old feelings of fear and sadness began to soften. I could think more clearly about what I wanted, not just what I hoped for. I realized that his return was not just about him. It was about me too. About my boundaries, my healing, and my strength. I remembered that I had learned to listen to myself, to trust my feelings. I knew now that forgiveness did not mean forgetting or accepting bad behavior. It meant freeing myself from anger and pain so I could move forward. He wanted to come back, but I had to decide if I wanted him back in my life. That decision was mine alone. I also understood that people can change, but change takes time and effort. It is not enough to say the right words. Actions must follow. So I chose to watch and wait, to see if his words matched his actions. I did not rush into anything. This was different from the past. I was no longer vulnerable in the same way. I was standing tall, holding my small light firmly. I knew that whatever happened, I would be okay. I had learned to be my own source of strength and hope. If he truly wanted to come back, he would have to prove it with respect, patience, and love. And if he did not, then I would continue on my path alone, proud of how far I had come. This was my moment of power, the moment I chose myself first, no matter what. It was not easy, but it was necessary, and it was the next step in my journey toward peace and happiness. I am different now. Those words echoed softly in my mind as I sat quietly, reflecting on everything that had happened. It was not just a change in my circumstances. It was a change deep inside me, a change in how I saw myself and the world around me. For a long time, I was lost in the pain, the betrayal, and the silence. I felt like a shadow of the woman I once was. But now, I see that pain was part of my journey, not the end of it. I have grown in ways I did not expect. I am stronger, not because I have never felt weak, but because I have learned to stand tall even when I do. I have learned that strength is not about fighting alone. It is about accepting help, asking for support, and being kind to myself. When he tried to come back into my life, I was no longer the frightened woman who would rush to open the door. Instead, I listened carefully, felt deeply, and responded with calmness and clarity. I could feel the difference in myself. There was a quiet confidence that I had never known before. It was not loud or boastful. It was steady and sure. like a small flame that keeps burning even in the darkest night. I realized that I no longer needed others to define my worth. I had found it within myself. I had learned to love myself in ways I thought were impossible before. The woman who doubted, who cried alone at night, was still there, but she had grown wiser. She was no longer afraid to face the truth, no longer willing to settle for less than she deserved. I noticed how my thoughts had changed. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" I began to ask, "What can I learn from this?" This new way of thinking opened doors for me. I started to see challenges as opportunities to grow, not as punishments or failures. I also became more patient, with myself and with others. I understood that healing is not a straight path. There are twists and turns, setbacks and leaps forward. This patience helped me forgive, not just others, but myself. I let go of the blame and guilt that had held me prisoner for so long. It was freeing to release those heavy feelings. I could breathe more deeply, sleep more peacefully, and smile more often. I began to care for myself in ways I had forgotten were important. I made time for quiet mornings with tea, for long walks in the park, and for hobbies that brought me joy. Each small act of self-care was a step toward rebuilding my life. I learned to set boundaries clearly and kindly. I no longer felt guilty for saying no when something did not feel right. I respected my feelings and honored my needs. This respect for myself made a difference in all my relationships. I attracted people who valued and supported me, and I distanced myself from those who drained my energy or caused pain. I also found a new voice, one that spoke honestly and gently. I was not afraid to share my feelings, to ask for help, or to stand up for what I believed in. This voice was a sign of my growth. It told me that I was reclaiming my power, one word at a time. Being different now did not mean I was perfect. I still had moments of doubt, sadness, and fear. But I faced them with courage instead of hiding. I learned to be gentle with myself during those moments, reminding myself that healing is a process, not a destination. I also discovered new dreams and goals. I was excited to explore what life had to offer beyond the pain and loss. I started to imagine a future filled with hope, love, and purpose. This hope gave me strength on difficult days. It reminded me that I was not alone, and that better days were ahead. Most importantly, I realized that my past did not define me. I was not a victim or a prisoner of my history. I was a survivor, a woman who had faced darkness and found her way back to the light. This truth gave me peace and joy that I had never known before. I am different now, and I am proud of the woman I have become. She is stronger, wiser, and full of hope. She is ready to live her life fully, with love, courage, and grace. And that makes all the difference. Choosing myself was not an easy decision. It took time, reflection, and many quiet moments alone. But one thing became very clear. I could no longer live my life putting others' needs before my own. I had spent so many years trying to please, to fix, to heal people around me. Now, it was time to focus on me. I remember waking up one morning with a strange feeling, a mixture of relief and fear. Relief because I finally understood that my happiness mattered just as much as anyone else's. Fear because this new path was uncertain and unfamiliar. At breakfast, I looked out the window and saw the city waking up. The sun was shining, and the world seemed full of possibilities. I made a quiet promise to myself. I would choose peace, kindness, and strength every day. Choosing myself meant setting boundaries. It meant saying no to people and situations that drained me. It meant learning to protect my heart from harm. I started small. I told my daughter that I needed space when her words hurt me. I told my son that I could not always be the fixer of their problems. It was hard to say these things. I worried about disappointing them or causing more conflict. But to my surprise, they listened. Not always perfectly, but they saw I was serious. They began to respect my limits. I also chose myself by taking care of my health. I began walking every morning. I ate more vegetables and less sugar. I slept earlier and gave my body time to rest. These changes made me feel better, not just physically, but emotionally. I had more energy and more patience. I was kinder to myself when I made mistakes. Choosing myself also meant forgiving myself. For years, I carried guilt over things I could not control. I blamed myself for broken relationships and missed chances. But I slowly learned that forgiveness is a gift I give to myself. It frees the heart and opens the door to healing. I wrote letters to myself, full of kindness and understanding. I told myself I was enough, that I deserved happiness. I began to see my worth clearly. I realized that I was not defined by the past or by others' opinions. I was my own person, worthy of love and respect. This new awareness changed everything. I felt lighter, freer, and more hopeful. I also started new projects that gave me joy. I painted small pictures, something I loved as a child but had forgotten. I joined a book club and met new friends who shared my interests. These simple pleasures reminded me that life is beautiful, even after pain. Choosing myself was not selfish. It was necessary. It was the foundation for all the good things I wanted to build in my life. I learned to celebrate my small victories. Each day I woke up and chose myself was a success. Sometimes the choice was difficult. Old habits and fears tried to pull me back, but I held on to my promise. I found strength in quiet moments of meditation and prayer. I connected with nature and felt peace in the soft breeze and the sound of birds. Choosing myself also meant letting go of toxic relationships. Some people did not understand my changes. They wanted me to stay the same, to be the person they expected. I had to say goodbye to some of those relationships. It hurt, but I knew it was for my well-being. I replaced anger and sadness with hope and gratitude. I focused on what I could control, my thoughts, my actions, my feelings. Choosing myself opened the door to new beginnings. I felt ready to create a life full of meaning and joy. I was no longer waiting for permission to be happy. I gave myself that permission. Looking back, I see that the hardest part was believing I deserved to choose myself. Now, that belief is my anchor. I face each day with courage, knowing that I am enough just as I am. This choice changed my story. It gave me power, peace, and freedom. And I know that no matter what comes next, I will always choose myself first. Because I deserve it. Because I am worth it. Because I am finally ready to live the life I have always wanted. The morning air felt different that day. It was as if the world had shifted quietly, softly, without any sudden noise or fanfare. I woke up and noticed the sunlight filtering through my curtains, warm and gentle, painting the walls in gold. I sat up slowly, breathing deeply, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a calmness settle inside me. It was a peaceful feeling. Not forced, not temporary, but real and steady. I smiled to myself, not because I had forgotten the pain or the hard moments, but because I had survived them. Because I was still here, standing, ready to face whatever came next. That smile was quiet, but it held so much meaning. It was a smile of strength and hope, of healing and courage. The days before had been difficult. There were moments when I felt lost, overwhelmed by the weight of loneliness and regret. But that morning, I realized something important. Life goes on. It moves forward, even when we feel stuck or broken. And so must we. I got out of bed and moved toward the window. Outside, the world was waking up too. Birds sang softly in the trees. People walked by with purpose and kindness. The city had its usual rhythm, but for me, it was a new beginning. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. The steam rose gently, curling in the sunlight. I looked at the quiet street below and thought about how much had changed. Not just around me, but inside me. The woman who sat there that morning was different from the one who had started this journey. She was stronger, wiser, and more at peace. I remembered the long conversations I had with myself in the quiet nights. The tears that fell silently in my bedroom. The moments of doubt and fear. All of it had led me here, to this moment of calm. I thought about my family. The fights, the misunderstandings, the pain that seemed impossible to fix. But I also thought about forgiveness, the kind I gave myself, and the kind I hope to give others one day. Forgiveness was not forgetting. It was not pretending everything was perfect. It was a gentle way to heal wounds and open hearts. I knew that healing was a process. It was not a single event or a quick fix. It was slow, like the rising sun that changes the sky from dark to light over time, and I was willing to be patient. That day, I took small steps. I opened my journal and wrote about my feelings, my hopes, and my fears. Writing helped me understand myself better. It gave my emotions a voice and made them less scary. I also made plans to take care of myself. Simple things like going for a walk, cooking healthy meals, and spending time with friends who lifted my spirit. These were acts of kindness toward myself, small but powerful. In the afternoon, I walked to the park nearby. The fresh air filled my lungs, and the sound of children playing brought a smile to my face. I watched the flowers bloom and felt a quiet joy in the beauty around me. I realized that a new day was not just about the calendar or the clock. It was about how I chose to live. Each moment offered a chance to begin again, to make better choices, and to find happiness in the little things. That evening, I prepared a simple dinner. I set the table carefully, lighting a candle to make the room cozy. I ate slowly, savoring each bite and feeling grateful for the nourishment. After dinner, I sat by the window and looked at the stars. The night sky was vast and full of possibilities. I whispered a quiet thank you for the strength to keep going, for the lessons learned, and for the hope that tomorrow would be even better. Before I went to bed, I called a close friend. We talked about life, dreams, and the future. Sharing my thoughts reminded me that I was not alone. There were people who cared, who understood, and who walked beside me. That night, I fell asleep with a peaceful heart. I knew that challenges would come again, but I felt ready to face them with courage and grace. A new day was more than just a fresh start. It was a promise I made to myself, to live fully, love deeply, and never give up. I smiled again, softly, as I drifted to sleep. Not because I forgot the past, but because I chose to embrace the future. And that was enough. The day began quietly, just like so many others before it. But in my heart, I felt something different. I realized how important it was to pause and say thank you, not just to others, but to myself. Thank you for the strength I did not know I had. Thank you for the courage to keep moving forward. Thank you for the hope that gently grew inside me. I sat in my favorite chair by the window, with a cup of tea in my hands. The sun was shining, and the birds were singing softly outside. I took a deep breath and let myself think about all the people and moments that had brought me here. So many times I had felt alone, unsure if I could go on. But here I was, still, standing. I thought first of my daughter. She had been distant and cold, the one who asked me to stay quiet at dinner, who made me feel small and invisible. It was hard to remember the love that was still there beneath the hurt, but I knew that saying thank you to her, even silently, was important. She taught me lessons about patience, forgiveness, and the power of silence. Without her, I might never have found this quiet strength inside myself. Then, I thought about my friends. They had been there in the shadows, offering support without judgment. I remembered the late-night calls, the comforting words, and the times they simply listened when I could not find the words to say. Saying thank you to them felt like opening a door to connection, reminding me that I was never truly alone. I also thought about the strangers who showed kindness. The cashier who smiled when I looked tired, the neighbor who held the door open, and the barista who remembered my usual order. These small moments, simple but real, reminded me that the world could still be gentle, even in the hardest times. But most of all, I thanked myself for the tears I allowed to fall, for the nights I spent thinking and praying for clarity, for the mornings I chose to rise and face another day, even when it was difficult. I realized that gratitude was not just about good things happening. It was about finding light even in darkness. I remembered a time, not long ago, when I felt so lost. I thought I had no power to change anything. But now, I saw clearly how much I had grown. The woman who once doubted herself was learning to trust her own heart. She was learning to speak her truth, even if it was difficult. I wrote in my journal, "Thank you for surviving, for healing, for never giving up." Writing. These words made them real. It made me believe that every step I took mattered, no matter how small. Later, I called my mother. Our relationship had always been complicated, full of unspoken words and old wounds. But today, I wanted to say thank you to her too, for the love she gave in her own way, for the sacrifices she made, for the lessons she taught, even if they were hard to accept. She answered the phone with a surprised but warm voice. We talked for a long time, sharing memories and hopes. I could feel the weight between us lifting, replaced by something softer, understanding. That conversation was a gift. It reminded me that gratitude could open doors, heal relationships, and bring peace where there had been pain. In the afternoon, I went for a walk in the park. The air was fresh, and the colors of spring surrounded me. Flowers were blooming, and children laughed in the distance. I smiled at a young couple holding hands and thought about how life continued in its beautiful, messy way. I felt thankful for the chance to witness it all, to live, to feel, to grow. As I walked, I met a woman sitting on a bench. She looked tired and sad, like I had felt not so long ago. I sat beside her and offered a kind smile. We started talking, and soon we shared stories of struggle and hope. I realized how powerful it was to say thank you, not only for what we had, but also for the chance to help others. By the time I returned home, the sky was painted with soft pinks and purples. I felt peaceful, filled with a quiet joy that came from deep inside. Before I went to bed, I took a moment to reflect on the day. Saying thank you had changed something in me. It had opened my heart, made it lighter, and more open to love. I understood that gratitude was not just a feeling, but a choice to see the good, even in hard times, a choice to honor the journey and the people who walked with me. That night, as I lay in bed, I whispered a quiet prayer of thanks for the past that shaped me, the present that held me, and the future that awaited. I smiled again, not because life was perfect, but because I was learning to live it with grace. And for that, I was truly thankful. Forgiveness is not easy. I have learned this the hard way. For many years, I carried a heavy burden inside me. It was full of guilt, blame, and regret. I blamed myself for so many things that I thought I could have done differently, better, or not at all. I blamed myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I blamed myself for the moments I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I blamed myself for the way my family had changed and how I had felt invisible, unheard, and unimportant. It took a long time, but now I understand that blaming myself did not help me heal. It only kept me stuck in pain. One day, as I sat alone in my living room, I looked at my reflection in the window. The woman staring back at me was tired, but strong. She had been through storms, but was still standing. I wanted to speak to her, to tell her that it was time to forgive herself. Not because she was perfect, but because she was human. Because she deserved peace, I started by writing a letter to myself. I wrote about all the mistakes I thought I had made. I wrote about the moments I wished I could take back. Then, I wrote about the lessons I learned from those moments. I wrote about how each mistake helped me grow, even if it hurt at the time. I wrote about the love I still carried in my heart, despite the pain. Reading that letter was difficult. Tears came easily. But with each word, I felt a little lighter. I realized that forgiveness was not about forgetting or excusing what happened. It was about accepting it and letting go of the anger inside me. It was about giving myself permission to be imperfect. I remembered a conversation I had with my best friend. She told me, "Forgive yourself, not for them, but for you. You cannot move forward if you carry that weight." Her words stayed with me. I understood then that forgiving myself was the first step to healing. I began to practice forgiveness every day. When a negative thought appeared, I gently told myself to let it go. When memories of pain came, I reminded myself that I was doing my best. I repeated simple words like, "I forgive you," and "You are enough." Sometimes it felt strange to say these things out loud, but I did it anyway. Slowly, I noticed changes inside me. I felt less angry and less sad. I felt more peaceful. I felt more open to love and kindness. Forgiving myself opened my heart in ways I never expected. I also forgave myself for the ways I had judged others. I realized that I had been hard not only on myself, but on the people I loved. I saw how their mistakes came from pain too, just like mine. Forgiveness became a gift I gave to everyone, starting with myself. One afternoon, I went to the park where I often found comfort. I sat on a bench and watched the sunlight dance on the leaves. I thought about the long road I had traveled. I thought about the woman I was before all this began, and the woman I was becoming. I smiled quietly. I was learning to love myself again. That evening, I shared my feelings with my daughter. I told her about my journey of forgiveness and how it had changed me. She listened quietly, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a softness in her eyes. It was not a big moment, but it was a start. Forgiving myself did not erase the past, but it gave me freedom from it. It allowed me to live fully in the present. It helped me see the future with hope. I learned that forgiveness is a choice. It is not something that happens once and then is done. It is a daily practice, a gentle act of kindness toward oneself. It is the beginning of peace. As I closed my eyes that night, I whispered one last thought. I forgive you. I love you. You are worthy. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. For so many years I felt trapped, not by walls or chains, but by emotions and circumstances that weighed heavily on my heart. I was stuck in a cycle of pain, anger, and disappointment. It felt like I was carrying a heavy load everywhere I went. I could not breathe fully. I could not move forward. Every day was a struggle. a reminder of what had been lost and what I thought I could never regain. But now, something has changed. I feel a new kind of freedom, a freedom that comes from within. It is not about escaping my past or forgetting the hurt. It is about choosing to live beyond it, choosing to let go of what holds me back, choosing to be alive in the present moment with all its imperfections and beauty. One morning, I woke up early. The sky was still dark, and the air was cool and fresh. I decided to go outside before anyone else in the house was awake. I walked barefoot on the soft grass in my backyard. The coolness touched my skin, waking me up gently. I felt connected to the earth beneath my feet, grounded and peaceful. Walking, barefoot, felt symbolic. It was as if I was shedding layers of pain and regret, letting the earth absorb my worries. With every step, I felt lighter. I was free, even if just for that moment. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I could hear the birds singing, the wind rustling through the trees. It was a simple moment, but it was full of life. I felt the sun begin to rise, painting the sky with colors of pink and orange. It was like the world was waking up with me, offering a new beginning. In that quiet morning, I danced. Not a big dance or a performance for anyone, just a small dance in my backyard. I moved slowly, letting my body express feelings I had kept hidden for so long. There was joy in my movements, a celebration of freedom. I was not dancing for others, but for myself. I was claiming my life back. Freedom is not just a feeling. It is an action. It is the choice to live fully, to embrace who I am, and to love myself without conditions. It is the courage to face my fears and the strength to move forward despite them. I have learned that freedom means saying no to things that do not serve my happiness. It means setting boundaries with people who drain my energy or bring me pain. It means choosing peace over conflict, hope over despair. It means listening to my heart and trusting my own voice. Being free also means accepting that I cannot control everything. Life will have its ups and downs, but I can control how I respond. I can choose to find light even in the darkest moments. I can choose to believe in myself. Sometimes, I still feel sadness or fear. But now, I let those feelings come and go like clouds passing through the sky. I do not hold on to them tightly anymore. I breathe through them and remind myself that they will not last forever. I also feel gratitude for the lessons that pain has taught me. Without those hard times, I would not be as strong or as wise. I would not appreciate freedom as deeply as I do now. One day I went for a long walk in the city. I noticed people rushing by, busy with their lives. I felt calm and centered inside, like I was watching the world from a peaceful place. I smiled at strangers, and some smiled back. It felt good to connect, even in small ways. I thought about the journey I have been on, from feeling invisible and hurt to standing tall and free. I am proud of myself. I am proud of the woman I am becoming. Freedom has given me a gift, the chance to dream again, to imagine new possibilities, and to believe that good things can happen. It has given me hope. As the days pass, I continue to nurture this feeling of freedom. I practice self-care, surround myself with people who lift me up, and keep my heart open to love and kindness. I want you to know that freedom is possible for you too. No matter what you have been through, no matter how heavy your heart feels, there is a way to find peace inside. It may take time, patience, and courage, but it is worth it. I am free because I chose to be free. I am free because I forgave myself. I am free because I love myself. Tonight, when I close my eyes, I will remember this feeling of freedom. I will hold it close like a warm blanket. I will carry it with me into every new day. Freedom is my gift to myself, and I am grateful. For many years, I was unsure of who I really was. Life's challenges and the opinions of others clouded my vision. I tried to fit into roles that were expected of me: daughter, mother, wife, friend, but I often felt lost inside. It was like I was wearing a mask, hiding my true self from the world, and even from myself. I did not know who I was beneath all of that. But now, after all the pain and growth, I finally know who I am. It is not about what I do or what others think of me. It is about the quiet truth inside my heart, the woman who has lived, loved, struggled, and survived. I am no longer afraid to face myself, because I have learned that my true self is worthy of love and respect. I remember a time when I doubted my own worth. I thought that if I was not perfect, if I made mistakes, I was not good enough. Those thoughts haunted me for years. They held me back from taking chances or speaking up for myself. I was afraid of being judged or rejected. But as I moved through my journey, I began to see those fears for what they were: unnecessary weights that I did not need to carry. I started to listen to my own voice, the small, gentle voice inside that told me I was enough just as I am. I learned that true strength comes from accepting myself fully, even the parts that are not perfect. One day, I looked in the mirror and saw a woman with lines on her face. Lines that told stories of laughter, tears, and wisdom. I saw eyes that had seen so much, but still shone with hope. I saw a woman who had been broken, but was healing. I saw someone who was ready to step into her own power. Knowing who I am also means understanding my values and what I stand for. I value honesty, kindness, and courage. I believe in forgiveness, not because it is easy, but because it frees the soul. I know that love is important, but so is respect for myself. I also know my limits now. I have learned to say no when something does not feel right. I have learned to protect my heart and my peace. This is not selfish. It is necessary for my well-being. One of the biggest lessons I have learned is that my identity is not defined by other people's opinions or actions. No longer do I let their words or judgments shape how I feel about myself. I am responsible for my own happiness and self-worth. There was a time when my daughter's coldness made me question everything about myself. When she asked me to stay quiet at dinner, it hurt deeply. For a moment, I doubted if I was a good mother or if I deserved love from her. But through all the pain, I discovered something stronger than sadness. I found resilience. I found the strength to stand tall and believe in myself even when others did not. I also realized that our relationship was complicated, and that was okay. Love does not always look like we expect it to. Sometimes love means giving space. Sometimes it means setting boundaries, and sometimes it means loving from afar. Knowing who I am means accepting this truth and finding peace with it. My journey has taught me that identity is not a fixed thing. It grows and changes as I do. I am still learning, still discovering new parts of myself every day. But now, I do this with confidence, not fear. I have dreams and hopes that are mine alone. I have passions and interests that bring me joy. I have a voice that deserves to be heard, and I have a heart that is open to both giving and receiving love. Knowing who I am also means embracing my past, with all its mistakes and regrets. I do not run away from those memories. Instead, I hold them gently, knowing they are part of my story. They have shaped me into the woman I am today. I feel proud of how far I have come. I do not need to prove myself to anyone anymore. I am enough. I am whole. I am me. This new understanding brings peace. It brings freedom. It brings a deep sense of belonging to myself first and foremost. As I move forward, I carry this truth with me like a steady light. It guides me through difficult days and reminds me of my strength. I want you, dear listener, to know that you can find this truth too. No matter what you have been through, no matter how lost you may feel, you are worthy of knowing and loving yourself. Your identity is a treasure, waiting to be discovered and celebrated. You do not have to be anyone else. You are enough just as you are. So take a moment to look within. Listen to that small voice. Trust that it knows the way. Step into your own power and embrace the beautiful person you are becoming. Because when you know who you are, the world becomes a place of possibility and hope. And that is a gift beyond measure. As I sit here now, reflecting on everything that has happened, I feel a deep need to share my message with you. This story is not just about me. It is about anyone who has ever felt small, unheard, or powerless in their own life. It is about finding strength in the hardest moments and learning to love yourself through every challenge. I want you to know that your voice matters, even when people ask you to be quiet, even when it feels like your presence is unwanted or ignored. Your feelings are important. Your experiences are real, and they deserve to be heard. Do not ever believe that you must shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You have a right to speak, to dream, and to live fully. Throughout my journey, I learned how easy it is to lose sight of this truth. When my daughter asked me to stay quiet at dinner, I felt invisible. I wondered if I was a burden or if I had failed as a mother. Those moments hurt more than words can say. But looking back, I realized they were also the moments that pushed me to find my own strength, quietly, on my own terms. Sometimes family can hurt us the most because we love them deeply. Their words and actions can cut us to the bone. But those difficult times also teach us resilience. They teach us how to stand back up when we feel broken. They teach us how to protect our hearts while still keeping them open to love. I want to tell you that it is okay to take time for yourself. It is okay to say no to situations or people that bring you pain. Self-care is not selfish. It is survival. When I bought the building where my daughter's family lived, it was not about control or revenge. It was about reclaiming my power and setting boundaries that honored my worth. I want you to believe in the quiet power within you. You may not realize it yet, but inside you is a strength that can carry you through storms. You may feel broken or lost at times, but those feelings do not define you. You are more than your pain. You are more than your fears. Look for small lights in your life, moments of hope, kindness, or joy. These lights are signs that you are healing and growing. Celebrate them, no matter how small they seem. They are proof that you are moving forward. Remember that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It does not mean you forget or accept hurt. It means you choose peace over bitterness. I forgave myself for the mistakes I made, and I found freedom in that choice. I want you to find that freedom too. You are not alone, even when you feel isolated. There are people who care, who want to listen, and who want to help you heal. Reach out if you can. Speak your truth when you feel ready. Healing often begins with one brave step. As you listen to my story, I hope you feel less alone in your struggles. I hope you hear the hope in my voice and know that it is possible to rise above pain. It is possible to find happiness again, even when the road is hard. Your story is important. Your life has meaning. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Stand tall, speak gently but firmly, and believe in your own worth. If you are going through a difficult time right now, please hold on. This moment will pass. Better days are coming. You have the power to create them. Thank you for listening to my story. It means more to me than words can express. I hope it touches your heart and gives you strength. Before we say goodbye, I want to ask you a simple question. Where are you listening from? What part of your own story are you living right now? Please take a moment to think about that. Your journey matters. Your voice matters. And if this story has touched your heart, I invite you to subscribe so you will not miss what comes next. I have saved something very special just for you. Remember, you are stronger than you think. You are worthy of love and respect. And most of all, you are enough, just as you are. Thank you for being here with me.